Hey guys, in today's video I want to go over a chaotic Scrabble game I played against my friend and fellow top player Jackson Smiley in the final round of a tournament I ran a couple of weeks ago in Scarsdale, New York. Now, I'll be going through the first part of the game relatively quickly as the end is where things get really interesting and crazy. The game started out very well for me. With the opening turn I have an S and a blank and play Ash Cake for 84 points, jumping into an early lead. Not to be outdone though, Jackson responds quickly with his only available bingo of Phineas through the S I just provided for 76. I draw pretty well after Ash Cake, but no playable bingos on this turn. I instead play Dit for 20, which looks best keeping the potent ALST lead. Jackson draws a bit clunkily after his bingo, pulling the UV combo. He sheds the V with Vinca for 20, keeping BSU. I draw very well after Dit and play Relates for 73 points, hooking Ash Cakes. It's worth mentioning I could play Haltiers for 76, which I considered, but didn't love putting an S between two triple word scores for just 3 extra points, so went with Relates. I was aware of the possibility of Jackson having a P for prelates, but I figured the odds of him having a significant play there were pretty small, and either he or I on my next turn would play above relates, blocking that spot, so I wasn't too concerned about it in the long term. Indeed, Jackson did not have a P. He drew poorly after Vinca, pulling the W to go with his U, and shedded it with ball for 18 points, setting up his S for hopefully a bingo with balls. I went through with my plan from last turn, scoring well and blocking prelates by playing boy for 31. Jackson draws well and finds his only playable bingo, features through the A of Ash Cakes, getting himself back into the game and, importantly, reopening the right-hand side of the board to continue his comeback. I draw poorly after boy, pulling more vowels, and play Harry for 24 from the H of Ash Cakes. I considered Daisy for 26, which scores 2 more points, but I really didn't love the idea of leaving the R in features open for Jackson, as it's an easy and high-scoring line to hit for a bingo, as it would cover 2 double word scores, so instead I play Harry for 24 to eliminate that possibility. Jackson draws terribly after his bingo, and goes aggressive here with League for 21 points. It's aggressive because League takes a D for leagued, an R for leaguer, and an S for leagues, so if I have any of those letters, I'm often going to have a big play on the bottom row, hitting one of the triple word scores. But being that Jackson's down a lot, he has a terrible rack and doesn't really have any other options, it seems like a good choice. I do have a D for leagued and a blank, but amazingly I have no playable bingos here, so I decided instead to play Udo for 17 points, figuring there's a good chance Jackson has a hook himself. I'm still in good shape here, I'm up, I have a blank, I should take this out and hopefully bingo somewhere on my next turn. Jackson doesn't have a great play here and once again decides to play aggressively with Mug for 19. Another option he didn't see is Tellium for 27 points, which is a little bit less aggressive, but I don't mind the aggression on his part here. He's still down, he's not in a good position, and with only 1 G left for MUGG and 1 S left for Mugs, as well as the blank, there's a decent enough chance from his perspective that I don't have the hook, and either he could draw one of the hooks himself, or maybe I get scared he has the hook and I have to sacrifice a lot of points to block, which would be a good thing for him. In any case, I do have the blank, and I do have bingos, although not in a way that addresses the Mug hook. So I somewhat reluctantly bingo without drink on the bottom, knowing I'm taking a big lead, but also knowing that there's the possibility that Jackson will still bingo hooking Mug for 100 points on his next turn. Thankfully for me, Jackson doesn't do that as he draws the Q, but thankfully for Jackson, my bingo of outdrink gives him a lifeline, Chi for 44 points, shedding his Q, keeping a good lead, and also opening another key bingo line, hooking in on the 11 row for 7-letter words. I decide to obstruct that line with this rack by playing Proved, scoring 29 points, and also getting rid of my V and some of my other tiles from my rack. Jackson here has the word Lunier on his rack, which I, thankfully for me, blocked on my previous turn, as it would have played with Lin. Here, Jackson elects to play Re1 through the EW, a nice fit for 22 points. He doesn't want to play in the bottom right part of the board, as playing vertically through the V, E, or D, as well as possibly playing horizontally on the 14 row under outdrink, are potentially useful bingo lines for him, and he doesn't want to block them. So he instead plays on the left, a part of the board that's already dead to bingos, and leaves the bottom right open. I now have a very interesting turn. I draw a bunch of scoring tiles. My rack is EIJPTWX. At this point, I figure the biggest threats to me losing are Jackson bingoing in one of a few spots. Most concerningly, hooking Mug with once again either the unseen G or the S on the O column, as well as potentially playing through one of the letters in Proved. I see he could also bingo under outdrink, but that's going to be harder to do. He'd have to put either an A or an I below the K, and one of the few tiles remaining that hooks pin to make a valid 4-letter word. So I decide to take out the most dangerous options here with ticks for 16 points. This completely stops Jackson from bingoing through any of the orders improved or by hooking mug. Note that Jackson can still score pretty well hooking mug, but he's not going to be able to bingo as Tix doesn't take any back hooks, and the longest word he could play is thus 6 letters. And at this point, I'm going up by about 70 points. I figure if Jackson scores 50 there, I can even withstand that. I just can't afford for him to bingo, so I decided to make a pretty big sacrifice here and play Tix to block any potential bingos for Jackson. And this right here, guys, is where things start getting wild. Jackson in this position, down 73 points with only 9 tiles in the bag, holding the Z, and with a dearth of bingo lines, decides he needs to get desperate. And he doesn't really have any good plays here, so he does something that looks crazy. Zig to the G in mug for 26 points. And the reason why this looks crazy is it seems like I'm just going to play with that Z, score big, and further pad my lead on my next turn. After all, there are 3 A's left and plenty of other good scoring tiles, so what are the odds that I don't have something through the Z? However, on the off chance that I somehow don't have an A, this could cause me significant problems, because Jackson would, if he draws an A, be threatening Hayes for 60 points, and possibly even better plays depending on what else he draws. So the odds are very low that I don't have an A, but Jackson doesn't have any other promising ideas here, so he decides to take the gamble and hope I don't have an A. A very out-of-the-box play by Jackson, but it's one of very few plays that seems like it could give him any sort of realistic chance to win, so let's see what happens. It turns out, do indeed not have an A, and this puts me in a very awkward position. I'm thinking, oh boy, Jackson's probably got at least one of the A's when he played Zig. Of course, it turns out he didn't, but from my perspective, you have to understand I was thinking he almost certainly did, given there are still 3 A's unseen and I don't have any of them. And I'm thinking, well, he's probably about to hit me with Hayes or something like that for about 60 points. My lead is sizable, but it's not that sizable. It's only 47 points, and I drew poorly. I have only one vowel, along with a bunch of clunky consonants, including a J, 2 N's, a P, and a W. So I need to figure out what to do. My bigger problem is, how do I actually block Jackson from playing with the Z? I have no valid plays that use the Z. So the only option I really have in that spot is to play Nip for 7 points. This does, it seems at least, block Jackson's plays with the Z and get rid of 2 of my consonants. And given the unseen pool, I don't really have to worry about Jackson bingoing on row 14, as it turns out it's not actually possible. So what could possibly go wrong for me after this play? If Jackson can't bingo on row 14, and he can't score big through the Z, I'm going to be up over 50 points and I should be able to coast to a victory. At least, that's what I thought during the game when I played Nip. However, after I hit my clock, I came to a horrifying realization. Nip, while it looks like it blocks the Z, actually does not. Jackson quickly responded with apps through the P for 61 points. If we go back, I should have realized that when I played Nip, there are still 3 A's, 2 E's, and an S left, and if Jackson has the right tiles, he could easily hit the 61-point apps, which is going to put me in a brutal spot, because with only 7 in the bag at the time I played Nip, there would be 2 in the bag for me after apps, in a position where I have a clunky rack and I'm still down, a really difficult situation that will often result in me losing the game. So, with that in mind, what should I have done? In this position, guys, what I should have done is very counterintuitive. I should have completely ignored the blatant setup Jackson just made and played Jeep for 26 points. Once again, the problem with Nip is I'm giving up a tremendous amount. It only scores 7 points compared to Jeep's 26. And it doesn't fully block. If I play Jeep, I'm going up by 73 points. Even if Jackson plays Hayes for 60, I'm going to be up 13 and it's going to be my turn. I should, in most cases, win the game. True, I'm keeping a clunky leave of G, N, N, W, but the other thing that helps me, guys, is the pool is vowel heavy. If you look on the right, there are 8 vowels and 6 consonants, so I am likely to draw vowels, which are going to help me deal with G, N, N, W on the rest of my rack. So while I won't always win after Jeep, I should win the vast majority of times. That is not the case when I play Nip and Jackson responds with apps, as he did during the game. So now what happened? Jackson plays apps for 61 and takes the lead, 378 to 371, and now all of a sudden I'm like, shoot, I totally screwed up. Now I'm getting low on time and I got to regain my composure and figure out what to do here. Thankfully for me, it was not hard to figure out what to do. There's pretty much only one viable play in this position. I have to score, I have to get rid of some of my high scoring tiles, and I have to hope for a good draw in the endgame. There is nothing to consider here other than Jewel for 30 points. It's the only thing that scores reasonably, and it at least blocks some of Jackson's potentially good plays, and it gets rid of my J and my W, my two most important tiles to get rid of. So I play this, wait to see what I draw, and hope for the best in the endgame. And now, guys, we reach the most critical turn of the game for Jackson. It is officially the endgame. The bag is empty. He's got EHLM000. He knows from his tracking I've got AACGN. He is down by 23 points. It's his turn. How can he win this game? Can he win this game at all? Jackson had a decent amount of time here still on the clock, about 7 minutes, but we both knew it was going to be a pretty tough endgame, and it was up to Jackson to figure out what the result was going to be. So he's thinking intensely for a while, scribbling vigorously on his sheet, and all I can do is try to figure out what's going to happen myself and just sit and wait. After using a couple minutes, Jackson puts down a play of model through the D of proved for 28 points. What Jackson was calculating here was that after model, I would most likely respond with nag making ma and jog for 27 points. After this, Jackson could play oo and eth for 20, bringing him to within 2 points, but then he gets 8 points from my unplayed A and C and would go on to win by 6, 434 to 428. Jackson put model down on the board when he had, I think, around 3 or 4 minutes left on his clock, and he was just vigorously checking his math and checking his calculations when, with just about 1 minute on his clock, he came to a startling realization. My best response, if we go back, after his play of model, is not to play nag for 27, but it's to play the higher scoring vac for 33, a play he just opened for me with the E and the L. After this, what's going to happen? Well, let's see. As before, Jackson's best bet is to go out with oo and eth for 20. That brings him to 426. He's getting 8 from my unplayed AGN, and guess what? The game would end in a 434 to 434 tie. Jackson does the math quickly, as he is very good at doing, in the original position, and concludes with about a minute or just under on his clock that playing model will result in a tie. So he spends his last minute vigorously searching for any play that might win. He comes up with a few other possibilities, but he has to be careful because if he makes another play that he can't fully calculate, he could easily miss something and end up turning a tie into a loss. And with a few seconds left on his clock, he exasperatedly plays model for 28. I was anticipating this, especially after he'd already put it on the board and thought about it and picked it up for a bit, and quickly responded with vac, as I had spent the time he had been using thinking and determined that there was certainly no better option for me. So we go into the line I showed you before. Jackson goes out with oo for 20, and we end up tying this game 434 to 434. This is, guys, what actually happened in the game. A pretty crazy finish to a back and forth game. Now, it turns out that Jackson did have one and only one winning play when he played model, and it's not easy. I'll give you guys a chance if you want to pause the video and try to solve this endgame for Jackson here. Like I said, it's not easy. He's one of the top players in North America, and he was not able to do it in 7 minutes, so give yourself a big pat on the back if you were able to figure this out. The one and only one winning play in this position is to play the word home for 18 points through the L of Jewel. Now, this feels bizarre as he's scoring a lot less than model, and he's getting rid of his two biggest scoring tiles. The idea here is that this play is a double setup. He's now threatening to go out with the word oleo in 2 spots, both of which are reliant on the play of home. Most obviously, he can play it on the 15 row, making ho, which would score 17 points. But he can also now play it down the O column, which requires knowing the obscure E hook on home, and this play would score even more, 25 points. And the thing is, home forks the board in a way that I am not going to be able to block both of these. The only way I possibly could would be to play under home, and I don't have an S for jewels, so that is not possible. As such, my best response to home would be to play ag, getting my maximum score in the top left corner of the board. That would put me up 30, but after Jackson plays oleo with the E hook on home, that brings him to within 5, and he gets 10 points for my unplayed ACN, and he would go on to win by 5 here at 431 to 426. And in case you're wondering, no, it doesn't do me any better to block Jackson's higher scoring outplay and force him to go out on the 15 row. If I play something like Geen for 12, blocking the higher scoring Olio, Jackson goes out with Olio and Ho for 17, tying the game and then winning by 8 after my unplayed tile bonus 421 to 413. And there's nothing else for me to do here, guys. Once again, I can't score more than Ag, I can't block both of Jackson's outs, and I am completely lost. So, once again, in this position, Jackson needed to find the very, very tricky Holm for 18 points in order to win this game. But in the actual game, he played Model for 28 and it ended in a tie. I think a tie is actually a very fitting result for this game because both Jackson and I made substantial mistakes towards the end of this game. Jackson, of course, didn't play the endgame correctly, and I made a pretty egregious mistake with Nip. Like I mentioned before, I should have played Jeep there and completely ignored his spot in the top right. But I think what that goes to show you is how brilliant Jackson's play of Zig was. It looks absolutely crazy and like it's just throwing any chance away. But on the off chance I don't have an A, and it turns out I didn't, it can either put me in a bind or cause me to panic and make a bad play. So that's a huge part of Scrabble, guys, is making plays when you're in bad situations that give you a glimmer of hope and, at the minimum, complicate the game for your opponent, and Jackson did an outstanding job of that. So, like I said, I think a fitting ending to a game where it was a very tricky situation for both of us. We both didn't navigate it correctly, and neither of us ended up coming away with the win. We ended up tying. So a really cool game, as I often have with Jackson. Always a pleasure playing him. We've had so many interesting games, at least one or two of which I've covered on my channel in the past before this one. I hope that list continues to grow. So shout out to Jackson on always being a great opponent. And yeah, thanks so much to you guys for watching. Really appreciate your support. Let me know if you enjoyed this video in the comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon for the next video. Bye-bye.